You're listening to RHR Talks, the podcast where the RHR team talks all things recruitment and advertising. We're going to be covering various topics on which we're regularly asked by candidates and hiring managers and offering our industry insight, which we hope you'll find useful, whether you're looking for that next opportunity or just to find the best talent. I'm Paul Walsh, one of the consultants at RHR. Each week, I'm going to be joined by my colleague and now podcast co-host, Tim Maguire. Tim and I are going to be talking with recruitment and advertising experts from various areas of our business. This week, we're joined by our consultant Danielle as we talk about the benefits of using a recruitment consultancy. Tim and I are joined with Danielle this week. We've already introduced ourselves previously. We're two of the consultants at RHR, but Danielle, here's the opportunity. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Danielle from RHR. I've been in the business for over 4 years now, and I specialise in all things head office. You've got your corporate side, so HR, finance, buying and merchandising, marketing, creative, digital, and e-commerce. So you name it, I most probably do it.
For those who haven't listened to the podcast last week, which I'm sure you should have, my name's Paul. I'm one of the consultants at RHR. So I work within the team with Danielle and Tim. And Tim is here as well.
I am Tim. Hello.
So we've obviously spoke about what we were going to cover today, which is essentially why use a recruitment agency. And it's going to be really conversational and catered toward both candidates who are looking for a new role and obviously clients who are potentially looking to make that hire. Agencies, there's obviously pros and cons, or a lot of people aren't as familiar with how they operate. Why use an agency from a candidate perspective?
From a candidate perspective, there's obviously lots of different reasons, and it will vary dependent on, why you're looking potentially. It might be the fact that you don't have the time to navigate your own job search. So you might be more of a, passive job seeker that's not got all their job alerts for different adverts coming in. They're not looking on LinkedIn jobs every single day. So if you have an agency, you're not going to miss anything. You're going to be up to date. The agency as well kind of know more around what you're looking for, so they can sieve out those roles that maybe don't fit your salary requirements or level. There might be a lack of experience there that you're wanting in that role, but you're not going to know until you speak to someone over there. So we kind of skip that stage for you. We know what you want, I guess.
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? I think sometimes people don't necessarily, especially if they've been with a business for a long period of time, they don't really know where they then slot into that market and whether they're underselling themselves or overselling themselves. Do you deal with a lot of candidates who have never used an agency before? What does that ratio look like for you?
Do you know what? I mean, even for myself, when I worked in retail, I had never used a recruitment agency. I wasn't that aware. I mean, I was very early stages of assistant management. So for me, it wasn't necessary anyway. But yeah, I am surprised by the amount of people that don't, because now working in one, I see how beneficial it can be. Yeah, I would say it's, I don't know, maybe 60-40.
Okay.
70-30 maybe at a push. But there's quite a few people that haven't. I mean, once you explain what we do, then it makes complete sense to them. It's not rocket science, is it? But,
no.
Do you think a lot of people know the difference between a consultancy and an agency? Because I think sometimes those two words get really muddled up in the industry, which of course, as RHR as a consultancy, it is different in a lot of aspects, especially from a candidate point of view.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about a lot of agencies that don't build and develop their relationship with their candidates, and it is more so someone gets you registered on their system, and then from there it's kind of, if they've personally got a job, then they'll contact any candidate on that system. Where with us as a consultancy, I mean, there's candidates that I've spoke to since I began my career at RHR. Might not have necessarily got them a job yet, but I still keep that relationship going, and it's more one-to-one service, and it's more about knowing our candidates and our clients to best fit. So I think that's one of the big differences from what I understand from an agency and consultancy when it comes to candidates.
Yeah, a lot more of a partnership instead of you fit this, so we'll put you forward to this.
Yeah, I think it's how our business model works. Like you just touched on there, Danielle, we have essentially candidate ownership, and that might not mean a huge amount to people outside of the recruitment world, but it is that one point of contact within the business who can then speak to you about vacancies that match what you're looking for, as opposed to you sitting on a database, which sounds really old-fashioned, because people often say to me, please make sure that I'm the top of your pile, and it's like, well,
I don't have a pile.
I don't have a pile. We're paperless, but it's also about, like you said, building that relationship. So from direct applications and via agency, so applying via agency, what would you say would be the main differences in terms of that candidate process and experience?
I think what I really enjoy about agencies, and if I was working in retail now, I'd definitely be more inclined to use one, or a consultancy to use one, because I'll get the opportunity that if on paper my CV and my experience doesn't necessarily fit that brief, but when you work with a consultant, they understand your knowledge, your experience, and they can pick up the phone and push a little bit more and kind of get you in the door. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to push every single candidate, but there are certain candidates where you just know they are great for that role, and you look at their CV and you're like, my client is not going to invite this person in next to the other CVs that I'm sending. So you have to pick up that phone. And I think that's a really big plus for the candidates, because without that, you might not even get that interview in the first place.
It brings that human element to recruitment, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can just push a bit more on like their achievements and put their experience in context a bit more, because for head office as well, like all roles can be so completely different in regards to experience and exposure. They might have the same job title, they might sit within the same salary banding, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're as, I don't know, independent in a role and has more ownership than the other. Like, you've really got to talk to someone to get that across sometimes. So I think that's the biggest plus, I would say.
I think being honest with candidates as well is, if someone's actively applying to all these positions that they're not going to be right for, but yet they don't have the knowledge that that's the reason behind it, they're going to get deflated. They're not going to move forward with the search. So more often than not, I've given people redirected the job search for them, which is more useful, I imagine.
Do you ever find it, Danielle, with your candidates that they've signed up to a number of different agencies or a number of different consultancies, and how do you think that plays out compared to just speaking to one or two?
Do you know what? It really does vary depending on the candidate. Like, some candidates are speaking to absolutely everyone and anyone. They're applying to like every single brand out there, and it's a bit like, I now can't really help you because you've already introduced yourself. Like, please just calm down a little bit. And then other candidates, they don't. They're just not as out there, I guess. I think there's a good balance, because we know there's some clients that we use more on a one-to-one that don't use any other agencies. So there's going to be clients out there that don't use us but use a different agency, because they have that partnership. They're not going to spread their job roles through all the different businesses. So I think you have to have that healthy balance if you are using a consultancy or agency, and really pick the ones that you feel are going to present you in the best way possible. So you're going to have those initial conversations and work out who you might gel with more, or who you feel puts you forward in the best light.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And of course, there's nothing wrong with talking to a few consultancies, agencies, and finding out, like you said, which one gels best with you, which one do you feel represents you best. And I guess in a metaphor sense, what would you rather? A whole crowd of people who don't really know you but can put your description to a job brief, or one person in the corner who really got to know you, that partnership, knows your skills, and when push comes to shove, actually can persuade a client to see you? Because sometimes the hardest part of the job search is actually getting an interview, isn't it?
Yeah, I think just maybe build it's a one-to-one relationship with your consultant. It's kind of like finding the right therapist, and you try something and you think,
Yeah.
but other people think they're amazing. So it really just I think it's a case-by-case basis on who they're working with and what that working relationship is.
I mean,
like.
the last 12 months has really taught me that I potentially could be a really good therapist. Especially
Yeah,
during a pandemic.
Life coach.
I just need the couch. Yeah.
From I guess one of the I don't want to say frustrations because it sounds like a negative thing, but I think it kind of links to what Tim and I were talking about on the last episode around applications. So just being more considered, especially in the current market. So I think you touched upon something earlier where, you know, you pick up the phone, you speak to somebody and they've applied to every single thing, spoken to multiple agents. And I get that they want to cast that net as wide as possible. What advice would you have to people who are deliberating, do I put my own search on a hold with direct applications, or do I just stick with the consultant? What's the best way to do it?
I feel like once you find the best consultant for you, they'll be honest. I try and be as honest as possible with people. You know, there might be a job role that I can help you with, but there might be a job role that I can't, and it would be really selfish for me to tell you that I can when I know that I've got no connection with that recruiter or no connection with that business, and I know they're not going to use me. Or even if it's a client of mine but they don't have the budget to use an agency, like how selfish would it be if I was like, don't apply, like don't apply, I'll help you, I promise, and then I know that I can't. So I think again it's that balance and that mix, and I think once you partner with the right people for the job search and you trust those people, then yeah, it makes life a lot easier. I think the worst thing is though that the consultants need that honesty and trust back. Like we know that we've all had a client come back and be like, oh, actually that CV was sent to us by this other agency, or actually that CV, they actually applied directly. But when we spoke to them, they were like, no, I didn't apply there.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like,
yeah.
You just make me look unprofessional, but you're also like making yourself look unprofessional at that point. Just be honest. Like if they didn't get back to you, there's nothing I can do about it at that point.
It's a common misconception, isn't it, where you think, actually, do you know, if I apply more than once, then it's going to double my chances of getting the job. It doesn't work like that.
No.
And I think on the flip side is there are some agencies that will send a candidate's CV without you asking or without your permission. I think going back to what you said before, Danielle, exactly. It's like a therapist. When you have that first call, that first meeting, lay out your expectations, hear their expectations, because everyone works differently. And I think once you realize that, things will go a lot smoothly, because I think, I don't know about you guys, but one of the first times I speak to candidates, their biggest frustration is they get promised everything and anything. We seem like magicians pulling rabbits out of hats, and then they don't hear from the consultant or agency for months on end, and sometimes never hear them again. And it's almost like a letdown right from the beginning.
Well, I think there's a stigma in the marketplace. It's quite similar to a state agency, and I think that honesty from the get-go, you know, I always say my ability to help is based on the jobs that I'm recruiting for, and that's the fact.
And I think as well, like it's that human element to it as well. Like there is a big stigma about recruitment consultants and estate agent that, you know, that we just want your CV to place you so that we can make loads of money. And it's like, we don't make any money until you start your job, and that money doesn't come out of your salary. Before that, we're working for absolutely free, basically, and that process can last quite a long time dependent on the level of role. So there is a big stigma, and as well, I think people need to remember recruiters are human, HR people are human. We've got so much going on and we're juggling as much as we can, and we're trying to get back to absolutely everyone, but there will be those times that we forget, that we've just genuinely forgot to reply, or forgot to pick up the phone and just check in with you. So don't be afraid to email.
Check in with us. Yeah.
Like I want to know that you're still active, and I want to know that you're still, you know, locked into finding a job role, because there's times where candidates just drop off the map and I'm like, I've got a job, where are you? Please call me back. Like, I'm sorry we've not spoke for a month or two, but I've just not had anything. And they just don't. And then 12 months later, they pop up and they're like, hi, have you got anything for me? I'm like, I thought you weren't looking anymore.
Yeah. It's very much a two-way street, and the candidate's dealing with one recruiter, but the recruiter might be is definitely dealing with more than one candidate. And whilst I think we definitely pride ourselves on that whole communication piece, it's knowledge is power, especially within a situation like that. So it needs to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
I think it's important to touch on, because we've talked all about talking to a client on your behalf, and obviously the main element of going to a recruiter or an agency or consultancy is to get you a role. But I feel like we should touch on what we do, because a lot of times, I'm sure you both, I've spoke to you about it before, it's more than just having the right person send a CV, about whether that's CV advice, the briefing call, the feedback. So Danielle, talk a little bit more about all those aspects and how it is more than just a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation to a client, and that's all we do.
I think it starts from the very beginning. Working as a consultancy, it's from that initial conversation. We don't just want to get your CV, find out your salary expectations, your notice period, and send your details over. We literally want to know, what is it that you're actually looking for? Because this role that you've applied into actually might not be right based on what you want. So give me that chance, have that conversation with me, and let me figure that out as well. And then having that initial interview with them. So we do go through a detailed interview with our candidates, and that's so that not just we know that they can interview, but also so that we can sell them in the best light possible. You know, they might shine lights on lots of nice achievements that then when I do pick up the phone, I can sell that into the client. So it's from the very beginning. And then I think as well, it's that constant catch up, like Paul said, trying to make sure that we're always find out, has their expectations changed within the last time we spoke to them? What else have they got going on? Can we push clients to move quicker for them, because they might miss out on you as a candidate? And then, the detailed job briefing that we do. So we will help you prepare the best way possible. Obviously, we can't give people the answers because that's just not how life works, unfortunately. But,
and it won't help them when they get a job,
we can guide you. And I think that's the best thing about consultancy, because how many times have you gone to an interview and you've had a number of no's, and it can get quite disheartening, but you don't know what it is that you're, I say quote unquote, doing wrong. And it could be the most easiest thing. You might be saying we when you're talking about all your achievements instead of what I've done, or you're just not selling the commercial side. Like, I work with a lot of creatives, and retail's been a tough market for the last couple of years. And although businesses want creative people, they also want commercial people. We need a commercial buyer. I hear that all the time. And it's like, it's just pulling that out of people. So we're coaching along the way. As well, the feedback. So if your expectations do change after the first interview or after the second interview, we can tell the client there and then, rather than let's all go through like this long process, an offer gets put on the table and you don't want it anymore. We can just be that middle person for them. And who likes talking about money? I mean, I love talking about money. Like, I want to know what my friends do for a living, what they make. I see someone pull up in a nice car and I'm like, I wonder what job they do. How much do they make a year? But not everyone is like that.
It is a stigma, isn't it? People feel really uncomfortable talking about salary. And I find sometimes clients feel uncomfortable talking about salary when they're with the candidate, because there's that, do we want to lose this candidate? Can we push back on finance to get more sign off on budget? So I think the way that we work, and maybe we've been just trained in this way, it's just about, let's put the cards on the table, first of all, because that is one of the main, it's not the only reason, but it is one of the main reasons why people are going to move into.
Yeah, of course. You need to support yourself.
And you feel like you've wasted this whole time interviewing for a job role, and then the offer isn't what you want. And the client feels the same way. Like, well, we thought you wanted, like, you applied, you knew how much the job was paying. Why have we gone through this whole process? So it kind of cuts that out as well. And at the end of it, we can have those honest conversations about salary. And rather than you feeling uncomfortable and feel like you're being a bit cheeky, or vice versa, the client feeling like, oh, I've got to give them an offer that I don't think they're going to accept, we can kind of be that middle person and take the awkwardness out of the conversation. So I think that's a good one as well.
Yeah, I think both for agency and client side, having that person in the middle cuts out a lot of uncertainty at the end. Like, for instance, you do hear when people apply direct, at the end someone doesn't take a job because of the money or because the commute's not right all of a sudden. Whereas if we go through that at the very beginning, I've had very few hiccups at the end because, of course, that's all been kind of sorted out right from the start.
How honest are you with the person you're interviewing with in terms of what other interviews you've got going on? I think that's a big thing. It's something that we really want to understand. You know, what else is going on? Where are that with the stages? Has anything changed? I feel like has anything changed is something that we say pretty regularly. That other people. Listen, the world can change in 2 days or a week. It really can. So I think understanding that is key.
Yeah, and as well, it's like when a job advert might say flexible working, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, every last Friday of the month you can have an hour back of your life. And people apply to the role like, oh, flexible working, great, I can like work from home 1 day a week. And it's like, no, you can't. So having the agency to like really pry on what that means.
Flexible a router.
Yeah, there's loads of different reasons.
We've talked a lot about the candidate side of things, and I think it's naturally there's a nice segue into the benefits for the client and some of the things we've just touched upon there, really around that candidate commitment and making that process as smooth as possible. If I was to say to you, why would a client use an agency? What are the benefits to a client to use to recruit via an agency?
I mean, a good one, which again falls a bit in both, is the private and confidential roles. I think that's a big reason why a client would come to us. So there may be a job role that's not been signed off yet, or just a reason as to why they can't publicly put out a position. So it's a private and confidential role and they need to find the right candidates. How do you do that? So you obviously go to a consultancy or an agency to help you, headhunters as well to help you to find that right person without disclosing who the brand are. So that's a big one, and also a really good pro as to why candidates, especially at that more senior level, to use and be registered with consultancies, because you won't know that job even existed if you wasn't. So that's a big one. Time is money, especially with like business critical roles. Businesses don't just work on one role at a time, one vacancy at a time. There's teams that are working on 30, 40, 50 roles, and depending on how many recruiters they've got or how many people in HR, how much responsibility the line managers might take on for recruitment, they just don't have that time. And that role being vacant is going to cost the business a lot more than the agency fee itself. So that's a big one, which I think people forget about a lot.
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with a couple of people over the years. I definitely have, around, okay, looking at the cost of this hire on your budget, what's the actual overall cost to the business? And it's a difficult one because it's not always that easy to measure. You can look at an agency spend and see that as a bottom line cost, but what do you know the impact of not having this vacancy filled is to the wider business? So I think that's always something to consider when looking to engage with an agency. What I was going to say is around the whole consultancy piece that we offer to candidates, I'm finding more and more that we're also offering this to clients, and especially clients that I've been working with for a long period of time. Do you find that you take that approach with the businesses that you partner with?
Yeah, so I do offer salary surveys a lot, and it is like a big question that I'm asked for a lot of the time because I do cover so many different roles in head office. I've got a whole spreadsheet on every single role you can think of, and it's really hard in head office as well because like one job title might not be reflective in a different business. So I've got like 10 different versions of what one person does in different job titles and salary bandings. It's crazy. And also locations as well. So we really do break it up for people, and because we don't just recruit in London, we also do look at the Midlands, the whole of the UK. We've got so much information on our database that we can offer to clients, so it's really handy in that way. As well as I think people don't realise all the other different things we do, like the response management projects that we've done in the past. past, the big volume recruitment. I think that was my first project coming into our HR, was a big volume recruitment piece of like 250 to 500 people. It was like, welcome to recruitment, Danielle. And I was literally on the phones all day, every day for 3 weeks, just kind of getting people booked onto assessment centres, make sure they was actually going to turn up, because a lot of people drop off of them. And then as well, doing the references checks for them as well. I then had to take ownership of making sure we were obtaining the right information for references. So there's a lot more, and I guess it goes back to agency versus consultancy and what we offer the client.
I think going back to what you said, and it's so important, and it's almost that goodwill equity. I think the vast majority of my clients I've worked with for a number of years, and so if I have a great rapport with them, and they support me and I support them, if they call and say, Tim, we really don't know about the salary for this buyer in this particular category, I would happily do it free of charge in my own time, because it's that you help me, I help you scenario. And I think that's another difference between an agency and a consultancy. Is maybe an agency, if you called up, they go, yeah, that's a fee, please. Whereas, it is sometimes a little bit, hey, really appreciate your support on that one. So, this is my industry expert on A, B, and C.
Yeah, I think that's why we've got the long-term relationships, because realistically, there's no client out there who's going to brief you on every vacancy they have. It just doesn't work like that. More often than not, it's about them utilizing you for your market knowledge, whether that be salary surveys, even just the job descriptions or where they're targeting or what the market's saying. It's just a conversation.
Interview questions to ask. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's important because we talked a lot about sourcing for a client, and of course a lot of people think or have that conception that an agency and client is the best for just headhunting the right person. But of course, now in this midst of a pandemic, what I found is my clients are coming to me less even about the sourcing but the selection. They say, Tim, I put up this advert and I've got about 1,000 responses this week. I need a professional. I need you to interview all the ones that look good, an hour interview, Skype. I used to do face-to-face, but obviously that's not happening. And I need you to come back and say the top 10. And of course, that more than just sourcing. It is that selection process that really does help a client, because as you said, Danielle, time is money.
Yeah, especially at the moment with the pandemic. One of my clients, she was telling me about a job role that she had advertised, and she had 2,000 applications, and then she was also getting a lot of messages through her LinkedIn or her work email of, have you seen my application? Have you seen my application? And she was just so overwhelmed by it. And yeah, she just needed that extra support. So just being able to offer that, I think, really makes a difference, again, between an agency and a consultancy. Another one I think as well to mention is like negative press, or when a business financially might not have done very well, or the press have actually just leaked old figures. That's happened to me before. So people are a bit unsure where that business is. And I mean, we know the news, you can't, like, the news is not gospel. There are going to be twists to it, so we can be that voice sometimes on behalf of the client that is facing that as a challenge. That's also a really good pro. We know them, we've most probably spoke to the line managers, we might have placed people in the business, we know how they've got on previously, so we can give all of that information to candidates that are a bit on the fence, that are a bit unsure. And it's not the client's fault that they are unsure, it's just unfortunately a news article's gone out and it's not read too well, or one person that might have had a bit of an iffy experience out of 500 people has told them about it, and then they're like, oh great.
It's that whisper game, isn't it? Yeah,
like Glassdoor, we're British, I mean, there's so many negative reviews about restaurants and holidays, hotels.
We just love to complain.
Work, like, it's just our nature. Like, so bad to say,
not
but
enough
it is.
bread in my bread basket. Yeah.
So my big thing is, like, go and have that first stage interview, have that conversation, and 9 times out of 10 they come back and they're like, I loved it. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that feels good as well. My friend of my cousin, twice related, had a bad interview once, and you're just like
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Oh, and it was a phone call. It's just like,
And I think it's just, how do we sell you as an employer of choice? Because often I will say to clients, okay, sell the business to me. What's the selling point to that business? Because it's about how do we take that full brief and how is that going to appeal to everyone. It isn't just about job title, salary and location and we've got a really nice head office. Okay, what's your next 12 months look like as a business? Where are you expanding? Where's this role going to move within the business? What does the line manager work like? So there's so many different areas that I think people wouldn't necessarily get from just an advert on a website.
You forget that most people, obviously salary is important, head office, but a lot of people, there was a Virgin survey that went out and they said 40% of their colleagues said the reason why they work there is their other colleagues. And so sometimes being able to know your business like that or being able to sell it for you makes all the difference.
Yeah, and I really enjoy when like a talent team and a HR team, I guess, trust me to work closely with the line managers and meet the teams and come into the head office and actually see it for myself, because it really does help me absorb everything that I need to go away and do a good job for that client. And I mean, I feel like I've made really good friendships from some of these as well. And it just makes our job so much easier to be an extension of them rather just to be another recruitment agency or recruitment consultancy that they're using.
Yeah, and it's all about partnering, because essentially what that will allow is consistency for the candidate who's going through that experience. You don't want it to seem that, oh, well, I'm dealing with the agency and that's not reflective of what they're saying in interviews. So it's just to make sure really that whole candidate experience is what it needs to be, and we end up filling the vacancy, really.
And it's a win-win. The amount of times, unfortunately, something happens or there needs to be another decision maker and a candidate goes for an interview and the feedback isn't for another 2 weeks. We update if I can say, really apologize, like, this is the reason it was happening. Whereas if there wasn't that in-between person, especially in the pandemic, after a day, I start thinking to myself, what's happening? So it is sometimes having that middle person to really be that extension of your HR and recruitment team, actually.
Yeah.
Also, like the onboarding process, like I feel like there's a bit of a misconception about where agencies just drop off in the process.
Yeah.
So like in our instance, we are trying to keep in constant contact with that candidate, and not just till their start date, but also 3 months after that, during their probation, making sure that they're okay, they're enjoying it. Is there any feedback that maybe they're not confident with relaying to the client, especially now that people are starting remotely, that might be lacking in that onboarding experience, that, we can go back to that client and be like, just an FYI, they haven't had their contract through yet and they're still waiting in the post, or just an FYI, they've not had their laptop or anything been delivered, what's going on, they haven't had training on the systems properly whilst working from home. Like, we can just be that middle person, so we don't just drop off as soon as it's like, yep, we want to offer, yep, they've accepted, all right, thanks guys, bye, done our jobs.
And once you place a candidate in a business, I always think that relationship is even more
concrete,
stronger, really. So if there are any concerns, I've found in my experience that the candidate will be quite transparent with me about what their frustrations are. You only have to say, how's it going, to hear someone say, right, let's talk about this, it's not fine. And actually a lot of those creases can be ironed out within, whether, like Danielle said, whether it just be something that needs to be included in the induction plan, or perhaps something that they're not getting from an operational standpoint. So
someone to talk to that understands.
It's like they feel like, oh, I'm not learning quick enough, or I've not done this yet. And it's like, whoa, it takes 3 months to even really get you stuck into a role. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourself, because then that's making them feel negative about the role, and really they just need to talk to someone. So it is a
We should put therapists next to our recruiter names.
But I think that's the big selling point, really, because it is that whole end-to-end process that we manage. So that process can sometimes be, I've seen it be 6 months, from initially being briefed on the role by the client to working with the candidate for the first 3 months in role. I mean, that's a long time, and throughout that time, we're forever checking both sides.
When a client can't find the right person and they've interviewed so many people, and they're like, they come to us and sometimes they just don't realise what it is that's lacking, whether it's they need to up the salary slightly or they need to look at a more junior candidate to fit within that salary banding. So they've spent like a good month trying to source this person based on the information they've got, when really if all they need to do is just ask us, and we're more than happy to point them in the right direction if we can. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other pros.
We're just great people. And we're very nice. We're not, I think. Do you know what? The amount of time I have it on that. Well, I haven't been to any parties recently, obviously, but you say, "Oh, I'm a recruitment consultant," and they go, "Oh, that's nice," and you think to yourself, actually, we are nice. Yes, we do work for sales because that's our livelihood, but it doesn't mean we're not nice people. And I enjoy my job. I enjoy chatting to people. And yes, there's an end goal, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy the process. We're not just machines.
Well, it's about the relationship, and I think you're going to get it's what you give to that relationship, as with anything. So you need to make sure that you are offering as much market knowledge as you possibly can, reflecting their onboarding and candidate experience, and ultimately filling the vacancy with the right person and making both people very happy.
Win.
Okay, Danielle, I'm sure you'll be a prominent feature on this podcast with Tim and I. Thank you so much for talking through what we've talked about today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime.
I feel like it's like BBC News or ITV this morning.
And now the weather. You've been listening to RHR Talks. In order to keep updated on future episodes, make sure to subscribe via Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. The best way to be kept up to date on vacancies and content would be to follow RHR on LinkedIn and register via our website at www.rhr.co.uk. If you're looking to hire and are interested in finding out more about all of the recruitment and advertising services we offer, then do reach out directly to any of our consultants or call 0207 432 8888.